The emergency lights in the Galactic Council chamber turned red for the first time in 400 years. Counselor Vathas stood frozen at his station, his blue skin turning pale as he stared at the data streaming across his screen. His three eyes blinked rapidly, unable to process what the sensors were telling him. "This cannot be correct," he whispered to himself. "Run the scan again." The computer obeyed, and the results came back the same. Somewhere near that small yellow star called Sol, in a corner of the galaxy that nobody important ever visited, something impossible was happening. Vathas pressed the emergency button on his console. Within minutes, representatives from 37 spacefaring species filled the massive circular chamber. Some appeared in person, their various bodies adapted to the station's atmosphere. Others joined through holographic projection, their images flickering slightly as signals traveled across thousands of light years. "Why have you summoned us?" demanded High Arbiter Solith, the military leader of the Council's combined forces. His metallic body gleamed under the chamber lights. "My fleets are conducting exercises near the outer rim." "Forget your exercises," Vathas said. He transferred his data to the main display, and a three-dimensional map of the galaxy appeared above the council floor. A single point near one spiral arm pulsed with bright red light. "Look at this." The chamber fell silent. "Those readings," someone said from the back. "They show dark matter manipulation." "That is impossible." "And yet," Vathas replied, "there it is." Far across the galaxy, Admiral Daniel Carter stood on the observation deck of Earth's largest orbital shipyard. He was a tall man with gray hair and tired eyes that had seen too many battles. Behind him, through the reinforced windows, hung the most beautiful and terrible thing humanity had ever built. The USS Vanguard floated in the darkness like a sleeping predator. Her hull was painted black, almost invisible against the void of space. She was not the largest ship in the galaxy, not even close. But size meant nothing compared to what she carried inside. "Admiral," a voice said behind him. "The crew is ready." Carter turned to see Captain Laura Mitchell approaching. She was young for a captain, barely 40 years old, with short brown hair and a face that rarely smiled. But Carter had chosen her specifically for this command. She was calm under pressure, brilliant in tactics, and absolutely fearless. "How does it feel?" Carter asked her. "Knowing you are about to command the most powerful weapon in human history?" Mitchell looked out at the Vanguard. "Honestly, sir, it terrifies me. But that is exactly why I accepted the job. Someone has to be afraid of this kind of power. It keeps us humble." Carter nodded slowly. He remembered when the scientists first came to him with their discovery. It had been an accident, they explained. A failed experiment that should have destroyed their laboratory. Instead, they had found a way to touch the very fabric of reality itself. Dark matter. The invisible substance that held galaxies together. Every civilization in known space had tried to harness it. Every single one had failed. The mathematics said it could not be done. The physics said it was impossible. But human scientists had never been very good at accepting the word impossible. "Dr. Torres is running final checks on the core," Mitchell said. "We can launch within the hour." Carter placed his hand on the window, looking out at the Vanguard. "Do you know what will happen when you activate that drive for the first time?" "The sensor pulse will travel across the entire galaxy," Mitchell answered. "Every civilization with halfway decent technology will detect it instantly. They will know exactly what we have done. And then?" Mitchell's jaw tightened. "Then they will come for us. All of them." Back at the Galactic Council, Ambassador Kevin Price was having the worst day of his career. He was a diplomat, trained in the art of careful words and gentle persuasion. Nothing in his training had prepared him for this. "You are telling me," he said slowly, trying to keep his voice steady, "that my government has been building weapons of mass destruction in secret?" And you want me to explain this? We want you to explain, Vatha said coldly, how a species that discovered fire only 100,000 years ago has achieved what the greatest minds in the galaxy could not accomplish in 10 million years. Price had no answer. He genuinely did not know. Earth's government had kept this secret even from its own ambassador. Perhaps they stole the technology, suggested one counselor. From whom? Soleth demanded. No one has this technology to steal. Then, we must destroy them before they become a threat. Another voice called out. Send the fleets now, before they can build more ships. Price felt cold fear spreading through his chest. Counselors, please. Humanity has never shown aggression toward any species in this chamber. We have always sought peaceful relations. Peace means nothing when one side holds unlimited power, Vatha said. Your species has changed the balance of the galaxy forever. We cannot simply ignore this. At Earth's shipyard, the final preparations were complete. Captain Mitchell stood on the bridge of the Vanguard, surrounded by her crew of 300 men and women. They were the best Earth had to offer, selected from thousands of volunteers. All stations report ready, said Lieutenant Commander Marcus Reed from the tactical console. He was a large man with dark skin and calm eyes. Dark matter core is stable. Weapons systems online. Mitchell sat down in the captain's chair. It felt strange, like sitting on a throne she had not earned yet. But there was no more time for doubt. Contact Admiral Carter, she ordered. Tell him we are ready to make history. On the observation deck, Carter received the message. He closed his eyes for a moment, thinking about everything that would change in the next few minutes. Then he opened them and gave the order. Tell Captain Mitchell to activate the drive. Deep within the Vanguard, the dark matter core hummed to life. Energy unlike anything the universe had ever seen began flowing through the ship's systems. The hull seemed to shimmer, becoming somehow less solid, less real. And then, like a heartbeat echoing across the cosmos, the pulse went out. Every sensor array in the galaxy detected it at the same moment. On 1,000 different worlds, alarms began screaming. Scientists dropped their instruments in shock. Military commanders scrambled for their weapons. In the Galactic Council chamber, Vathos watched the readings spike beyond anything their systems could measure. His face went pale with something that might have been fear or might have been respect. What have they done? Someone whispered. Price looked at the display, finally understanding what his species had accomplished. A small smile crossed his face despite his fear. We have announced ourselves, he said quietly, and we are not going anywhere. The age of human darkness had begun. 3 days had passed since the pulse, and the Galactic Council had not stopped arguing. Representatives shouted at each other across the chamber. Some demanded immediate war. Others called for negotiation. A few simply sat in stunned silence, trying to understand how everything had changed so quickly. High Arbiter Solith stood at the center of the chaos, his metallic body reflecting the flashing lights of dozens of communication screens. He had commanded the Council's military forces for 2 centuries. He had crushed rebellions, ended wars, and maintained peace across 1,000 star systems. But he had never faced anything like this. We must act now, he said, his voice cutting through the noise. Every hour we waste in debate is another hour the humans have to build more ships. Councilor Vatha shook his head. And what do you propose? Send our fleets against weapons we do not understand. Our ships would be destroyed before they fired a single shot. Then we send everything, Solith replied. Overwhelm them with numbers. No matter how powerful their technology, they cannot fight the entire galaxy at once. Ambassador Price stepped forward. He had spent the last 3 days defending his species, answering questions he could not answer, making promises he could not keep. He was exhausted, but he could not stop now. High Arbiter, he said carefully, Humanity has only one ship. One. We are not building an invasion fleet. We are simply trying to protect ourselves. Protect yourselves from what? Vathos demanded. No species has threatened the Earth in your entire history. Price wanted to laugh at that. He thought about all the times the Council had ignored human requests for trade agreements. All the times Earth's representatives had been treated like children at a grown-up dinner table. All the times other species had looked at humans with contempt, seeing nothing but primitive creatures who had barely learned to leave their own planet. Perhaps, Price said quietly, we wanted to make sure no one ever would. Far from the Council chamber, the USS Vanguard drifted through the asteroid belt near Jupiter. Captain Mitchell had moved her ship away from Earth, not wanting to draw attention to the planet if trouble came. Now she waited, watching her sensors, preparing for whatever happened next. Captain, Lieutenant Commander Reed called from his station. Long-range sensors are picking up movement near the border of the solar system. Mitchell walked over to look at his screen. Her stomach tightened when she saw the numbers. How many? Still counting, ma'am. At least 200 ships. Maybe more. Mitchell nodded slowly. She had expected this. Time until they reach weapons range? At current speed, approximately 6 hours. 6 hours. Mitchell thought about her crew, about their families back on Earth, about everything they were fighting for. Then she pushed those thoughts aside. There was no room for doubt now. Contact Admiral Carter. Tell him we have company. On Earth, Dr. Megan Torres was running on 3 hours of sleep and too much coffee. As the lead scientist of the Dark Matter Project, she was responsible for understanding exactly what they had created. The problem was that even she did not fully understand it. She stood in her laboratory, surrounded by screens showing data from the Vanguard. The ship's core was performing beyond all expectations. Energy output was stable. Weapons systems were responding perfectly. Everything was working exactly as designed. So why did she feel so afraid? Dr. Torres, her assistant called. Admiral Carter is on the line. She picked up the communication device. Admiral, I assume you have heard about the fleet. I have, Carter's voice replied. He sounded tired but determined. I need to know what the Vanguard can do. Can she fight 300 ships alone? Torres closed her eyes, running calculations in her head. The dark matter weapons can penetrate any known shield technology. The phasing hull should make her almost impossible to hit. In theory, yes, she could fight that many ships. And in practice? In practice, Admiral, we have never tested these systems in real combat. Anything could go wrong. There was a long pause on the other end. Then I suppose Captain Mitchell will have to be careful. Torres wanted to argue, to tell him that careful was not enough when facing those kinds of odds. But she knew there was no other choice. The Vanguard was all they had. Back at the Council chamber, Vathos had slipped away from the ongoing debate. He moved through the station's corridors until he reached a private communication room. Inside, a holographic display waited for him. He activated the encryption protocols and opened a secure channel to the Kalari homeworld. Moments later, the image of another Kalari appeared before him. This one wore the robes of a high official, his face marked with the symbols of the ruling council. Cousin, the image said, I have been waiting for your report. The humans are more dangerous than we thought, Vathos replied. The council is divided. Some want war, others want negotiation. But neither approach will work. Then what do you suggest? Vathos leaned closer to the display. If we cannot destroy humanity, we must control them. We need to get inside their organization, learn their secrets, find their weaknesses. Direct confrontation will only make them stronger. The official nodded slowly. You are suggesting infiltration. I am suggesting survival. The galaxy has changed, cousin. We must change with it, or be left behind. On the outer edges of the solar system, Fleet Commander Rathin stood on the bridge of his flagship. He was a large creature with gray skin and 4 arms, each one capable of crushing steel. He had commanded fleets for decades. He had never lost a battle. He looked at the tiny point of light on his sensors that represented the human ship. One vessel against his entire armada. It should have been a joke, but Rathon was not laughing. "Open a channel to the human ship," he ordered. A moment later, Captain Mitchell's face appeared on his screen. She looked calm, almost bored, as if facing 300 warships was something she did every day. "Commander Rathon," she said, "I was wondering when you would call." "Captain Mitchell, I am authorized by the Galactic Council to demand your immediate surrender. You will power down your weapons and prepare to be boarded. Your ship and its technology will be confiscated. Your crew will be taken into custody." Mitchell actually smiled. "That is an interesting offer. Let me make a counter-proposal. You are in no position to negotiate. I am in a ship that your sensors cannot properly read, carrying weapons your scientists cannot understand. I would say that puts me in an excellent position." She leaned forward in her chair. "Here's my offer. Turn your fleet around. Go home. Tell the Council that humanity does not want war, but we are not afraid of one either. Do this, and everyone lives." Rathion's 4 hands clenched into fists. "You are one ship, one. I have 300. Then you should feel safe," Mitchell replied. "Come and take us. If you can." She cut the channel. Rathan stared at the blank screen for a long moment. Then he turned to his crew. "All ships, advance to attack formation. We end this now." On Earth, Admiral Carter watched the fleet movements on his tactical display. The alien ships were closing in fast. Soon, there would be no turning back. He picked up his communication device and contacted the shipyard. "This is Admiral Carter. I need the Sentinel and the Eclipse ready for launch in 4 hours. I do not care what it takes. Our people need backup." He set down the device and looked out at the stars. "Hold on, Lavra," he whispered. "Help is coming." But both of them knew that 4 hours might as well be forever. The first wave of missiles came screaming toward the Vanguard like a swarm of angry insects. There were hundreds of them, each one carrying enough explosive power to destroy a small city. Any normal ship would have been torn apart in seconds. Captain Mitchell did not even flinch. "Lieutenant Dunn," she said calmly, "activate the phasing hull." Lieutenant Ashley Dunn was young, barely 25, with red hair pulled back in a tight bun. Her hands moved across the helm controls with practiced speed. "Phasing hull active, Captain." The Vanguard seemed to shimmer, her hull becoming somehow less solid. The missiles reached her and passed straight through, exploding harmlessly in the empty space behind the ship. On the bridge of the alien flagship, Fleet Commander Rathian stared at his screens in disbelief. "That is not possible." "Commander," one of his officers said, voice shaking, "our weapons are having no effect. The human ship is not even trying to dodge." Rathian's 4 fists slammed down on his console, then hit them with everything. All ships opened fire. 300 warships unleashed their weapons at once. Plasma beams, railgun rounds, nuclear missiles, and energy torpedoes all converged on the single human vessel. The space around the Vanguard lit up like a sun. When the light faded, the Vanguard was still there, untouched, waiting. "My turn," Mitchell said softly. She turned to Lieutenant Commander Reed. "Target the lead squadron. Fire dark matter cannons." Reed pressed the firing controls. The Vanguard's main weapons came to life with a sound like thunder rolling through deep space. Beams of pure darkness shot forward, invisible to normal sensors, but devastating in their effect. The first alien cruiser never knew what hit it. The dark matter beam passed through its shields like they were not there. It passed through the armor plating. It passed through the internal bulkheads and the crew quarters and the engine room. Everywhere it touched, matter simply ceased to exist. The ship did not explode. It did not burn. It simply fell apart, cut into pieces by a weapon that could not be stopped. "Target destroyed," Reed reported. His voice was steady, but his hands were trembling slightly. "Moving to next target." The second ship died just as quickly. Then the third. Then the fourth. On the council station, every representative watched the battle in horrified silence. The tactical display showed their mighty fleet being carved apart by a single vessel. Ships that had taken years to build were being destroyed in seconds. "This is not a battle," someone whispered. "This is a slaughter." Ambassador Price stood apart from the others, his face unreadable. He did not celebrate the destruction. He did not cheer for his species. He simply watched, wondering what humanity had become. Counselor Vathas appeared beside him. "Your people have made themselves enemies of the entire galaxy. You understand that, yes?" "We did not start this fight," Price replied. "No, but you built the weapons that made it inevitable." Vathas shook his head slowly. "I wonder if your Captain Mitchell has any idea what she has unleashed today." On the Vanguard, Mitchell knew exactly what she was doing. She had destroyed 20 ships in the first 5 minutes of battle. Then 30. Then 40. Each kill sent a message to the galaxy. Humanity was not to be threatened, but she took no pleasure in it. "Captain," Reed called out, "enemy formation is breaking up. Several ships are falling back." "Do not pursue," Mitchell ordered. "Let them run. We are defending ourselves, not conquering." Sergeant Nathan Cole stood near the back of the bridge with his Marine squad. They had nothing to do in a space battle, no enemies to fight hand to hand. But Cole watched the tactical display with growing unease. "Captain," he said, "some of those retreating ships are circling around. They are trying to get behind us." Mitchell nodded. She had noticed the same thing. "They are learning, adapting. Commander Rathian is smarter than I gave him credit for." "Orders, ma'am." "Hold position. Let them come." The alien ships completed their flanking movement, surrounding the Vanguard on all sides. Rathan believed that if they could hit the human ship from every direction at once, something would have to get through. He was wrong. The Vanguard spun in place, her dark matter cannons firing in every direction. Ships died on all sides. The phasing hull continued to deflect every attack. It was like watching a lion surrounded by mice, each one trying desperately to land a bite. On Earth, Admiral Carter watched the battle data streaming across his screens. The Vanguard was performing beyond all expectations. But he could see what Mitchell could not. The dark matter core was running hot. The continuous firing was putting strain on systems that had never been tested this hard. "Dr. Torres," he called into his communicator. "What is the status of the core?" Torres's voice came back tense and worried. "Temperature is rising but still within acceptable limits. Captain Mitchell needs to reduce her rate of fire or risk overheating." Carter looked at the tactical display. 47 enemy ships destroyed. Over 250 remaining. Mitchell could not afford to slow down. "Send her the data," he ordered. "Let her make the call." On the Vanguard, Mitchell received the warning. She studied the numbers for a moment, then made her decision. "Reduce firing rate by 20%, she ordered. "Target only ships that pose immediate threat." "Captain," Reed protested, "if we slow down, they will have time to regroup. If we burn out our core, we will have nothing. Trust me, Commander." The battle continued, but the rhythm changed. The Vanguard became more selective, more precise. Instead of destroying every ship in sight, Mitchell focused on the command vessels, the communication ships, the fleet coordinators. She was cutting the head off the snake. Rathine watched his command structure collapse around him. Ships that lost contact with the flagship began to scatter. Captains who had never faced defeat started to panic. His carefully planned attack had become chaos. "All ships," he broadcast, "fall back to Rally Point 7. We will regroup and attack again." But even as he gave the order, he knew the truth. This battle was over. His fleet had been broken by a single ship dot as the alien armada retreated. Mitchell finally allowed herself to breathe. Her hands were shaking. Her uniform was soaked with sweat. But they had one. "Casualties?" she asked. "None, Captain," Dunn reported, her voice filled with wonder. "Not a single crew member injured." Mitchell looked around her bridge at the men and women who had just faced 300 warships. They looked tired, scared, and absolutely proud. "Contact Admiral Carter," she said. "Tell him the solar system is secure." On the council station, the representatives sat in stunned silence. Their greatest fleet had been defeated. Their most powerful weapons had proven useless. Everything they believed about their place in the galaxy had been shattered. Vathos broke the silence first. "We need a new approach. What do you suggest?" Soleth demanded. His metallic body was still shaking with rage. "We threw our best at them and accomplished nothing." "Exactly," Vathos said. "Direct combat has failed. We need something more subtle. Something they will not see coming." He looked at the display showing the human solar system, his mind already forming a new plan. If weapons could not destroy humanity, perhaps betrayal could. The man who called himself Kyle worked on Earth's orbital shipyard for 3 months before anyone suspected him. He was quiet, hardworking, and always willing to take extra shifts. His coworkers liked him. His supervisors praised him. Nobody knew that his real name was Kiro, or that he was a Kalari agent wearing a perfect human disguise. The transformation had been painful. The Kalari scientist had spent weeks restructuring his body, changing his blue skin to pink, reducing his 3 eyes to 2, reshaping every bone and muscle until he could pass for human. But Kirill had accepted the pain gladly. His mission was too important for complaints. He moved through the shipyard's corridors with a toolbox in his hand, nodding politely to the security guards he passed. They never stopped him. They never questioned him. He was just another maintenance worker in a facility that employed thousands. Inside the toolbox, hidden beneath layers of ordinary equipment, were 12 small devices. Each one was designed to attach to a dark matter conduit and slowly destabilize the energy flow. Alone, they were harmless. Together, they would turn the entire shipyard into a bomb. In her laboratory, Dr. Megan Torres frowned at her monitoring screens. The power readings from the new ships were showing small fluctuations, tiny variations that should not exist. She had reported them to the engineering team, but they had found nothing wrong. "Probably just calibration drift," her assistant had said. "The systems are new. They need time to settle." Torres wanted to believe that, but something felt wrong. She could not explain it, could not point to any specific problem. Just a feeling in her gut that something was not right. On the other side of the galaxy, Council of Vathos held his secret meeting. Representatives from 6 different species had gathered in a hidden chamber on a border world, far from Council surveillance. They sat around a circular table, their faces hidden in shadow. "You all know why we are here," Vathos said. "The humans have changed everything. Their dark matter technology makes them the most dangerous species in the galaxy. If we do nothing, they will dominate us all." The Council tried direct attack, said a Morthan general, his insect-like eyes gleaming in the dim light. "It failed completely. Because the Council is weak," Vathos replied. "They are too concerned with laws and protocols. They refuse to do what must be done. And what is that? asked a Valari priestess, her silver robes rustling as she leaned forward. We strike at the heart of their power. My agent is already in position at their main shipyard. When he activates his devices, the entire facility will be destroyed, along with their new ships and their precious scientists. Without the people, who understand the technology, the humans will be helpless. The representatives exchanged glances. Some looked uncertain. Others looked eager. And after the shipyard is destroyed? The Morthan asked. Then we attack with everything we have. Not just our own fleets, but all of ours combined. The humans may have beaten 300 ships, but can they beat 3,000? On Earth, Secretary Diana Walsh sat in her office reviewing reports. As Secretary of Defense, she was responsible for humanity's military strategy. It was a job that had become much more complicated in recent weeks. Admiral Carter stood before her desk, waiting for a response to his latest proposal. You want to promote Captain Mitchell to Rear Admiral, Walsh said, looking up from the document. She has only commanded one ship for a few months. She defended our entire solar system with that one ship, Carter replied. She destroyed 47 enemy vessels without losing a single crew member. If that does not earn a promotion, I do not know what does. Walsh set down the report and leaned back in her chair. The Council will see this as provocation. They will think we are preparing for war. They already think that. Mitchell's victory proved that we can defend ourselves. Now we need to show them that we are serious about protecting our people. Walsh thought for a long moment. Then she nodded. Very well. Make the promotion. But Carter, I want you to understand something. We cannot fight the entire galaxy forever. Sooner or later, we will need to find another way. I know, Carter said quietly. I just hope we survive long enough to find it. On the USS Sentinel, Commander Scott Harris was conducting a final systems check before launch. The Sentinel was the second dark matter warship, identical to the Vanguard in almost every way. Harris had trained for months to command her, and he was eager to prove himself. Sergeant Cole and his Marine, SQUAD, had been transferred to the Sentinel for its first mission. Cole walked the corridors, familiarizing himself with the ship's layout. Something caught his attention near the engine section. A maintenance worker he did not recognize. Hey, Cole called out. You there? Stop. The worker turned. He had a friendly face and an easy smile. Something wrong, Sergeant? Cole studied him carefully. Something about the man seemed off, though he could not say what. This is a restricted area. What are you doing here? Just routine maintenance. The worker held up his toolbox. Power conduit inspection. I have authorization. Show me. The worker reached into his pocket and produced an identification card. Cole examined it closely. Everything looked correct. But that feeling in his gut would not go away. Wait here, Cole said. I want to verify this with security. He turned to contact the bridge, and that was when the worker attacked. Kirill moved faster than any human could. His fist struck Cole in the back of the head with bone-crushing force. But Cole was a Marine, trained to fight in the worst conditions imaginable. Even as he fell, he twisted and lashed out with his boot, catching Kirill in the knee. The two men crashed to the deck, grappling for control. Kirill was stronger, his Kalari body enhanced for combat. But Cole was fighting for his ship, his crew, his species. He refused to stay down. Security to engine section, Cole managed to shout before Kirill's hands closed around his throat. The fight lasted only minutes, but it felt like hours. By the time security arrived, Cole was barely conscious, and Kirill was unconscious, subdued by a blow from a fire extinguisher that Cole had grabbed in desperation. The devices were found, scattered across the floor, fallen from the toolbox during the struggle. Dr. Torres was called to examine them. When she understood what they were designed to do, her face went pale. If these had been activated, she said slowly, The explosion would have destroyed not just the ship, but the entire shipyard. Everyone would have died. Admiral Carter received the news within the hour. He immediately ordered a complete security sweep of all facilities. More devices were found on the USS Eclipse. More were found in the shipyard's main reactor room. The sabotage had been extensive, carefully planned, and almost successful. How did we miss this? Carter demanded. The agent had perfect credentials, his security chief reported. Perfect identity. Perfect background. Someone on the outside helped him get in. Carter knew what that meant. Humanity had enemies they could not see, enemies willing to destroy them through deception and treachery instead of open battle. The sweep took 12 hours. During that time, one of the partially activated devices began to malfunction. A dark matter core on the shipyard's storage level became unstable, its energy readings spiking beyond safe limits. Lieutenant Commander Reed, temporarily assigned to the shipyard, was the first to notice. Admiral, we have a problem. One of the cores is going critical. The evacuation alarm sounded immediately. Thousands of workers ran for escape pods, cramming into every available ship. But the core was destabilizing too fast. If it exploded, the blast would catch everyone. We need to eject the core, Reed said. Push it away from the station before it blows. That requires someone to stay behind and operate the controls manually, Torres said, her voice breaking. It is a one-way trip. Carter looked at the readings. The core would explode in minutes. There was no time for debate. I will do it, he said. Admiral, no, Reed protested. You are too valuable. Then find me another option in the next 30 seconds. Reed worked frantically, his fingers flying across the console. At the last possible moment, he found a solution, a way to remotely operate the ejection system using the shipyard's emergency protocols. The core was ejected. It drifted away from the station, spinning slowly in the darkness dot, and then it exploded. The blast was visible from Earth, a flash of light brighter than any star, spreading outward in a wave of pure destruction. The shipyard shook but held. The evacuation shuttles were knocked off course, but survived. But the explosion had done more than just damage. It had revealed their location to everyone. Carter watched his sensors as ships began appearing at the edge of the solar system. Not hundreds this time. Thousands. Ships from species he recognized and some he did not. All of them heading straight for Earth. Vathos's Shadow Alliance had arrived. All hands. Carter broadcast to every ship and station in human space. Battle stations. This is not a drill. The enemy is here. On the newly christened Rear Admiral Mitchell's bridge, the tactical display lit up with more contacts than she had ever seen. Time to see if we can do this again, she said quietly. But this time, we do it together. 2,743 ships emerged from hyperspace around Earth's solar system. They came from 7 different species, each one bringing their most powerful warships, their best commanders, their deadliest weapons. It was the largest fleet ever assembled in galactic history, all united by a single purpose, the destruction of humanity. Rear Admiral Lavra Mitchell stood on the bridge of the USS Vanguard, looking at the tactical display. Behind her were 4 other dark matter warships, the Sentinel, the Eclipse, the Defender, and the Horizon. The last 2 had been rushed into service just hours ago, their crews barely trained. Their systems barely tested. 5 ships against an armada. Admiral, Lieutenant Dunn said from the helm, enemy fleet is taking attack formation. They will be in weapons range in 20 minutes. Mitchell nodded slowly. She had faced impossible odds before and won. But this was different. This was not a fight she could win through superior firepower alone. Open a channel, she ordered. Broadcast to all ships, friendly and enemy. The communication officer complied. Mitchell stood straight, her voice calm and steady as it carried across the void. "This is Rear Admiral Laura Mitchell of Earth's Dark Matter Fleet. I am speaking to every captain, every commander, every pilot in this armada. I know why you are here. You are afraid. You believe that humanity is a threat that must be destroyed before we destroy you." She paused, letting her words sink in. "You are wrong. We did not build these ships to conquer the galaxy. We built them because we were alone, surrounded by species that looked at us with contempt, that dismissed us as primitives, that refused to treat us as equals. We built them because we wanted the same thing every species wants, the right to exist in peace." In the Galactic Council chamber, every representative watched Mitchell's broadcast. Ambassador Price stood among them, his heart pounding in his chest. "If you attack us today," Mitchell continued, "many of you will die. Our weapons are powerful, and we will use them to defend our home. But I do not want that. I do not want to fill space with the wreckage of your ships and the bodies of your crews. I am asking you, all of you, to turn around. Go home to your families. Let us find another way." The channel went silent. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then the Shadow Alliance fleet continued its advance. Mitchell watched them come and felt a deep sadness in her heart. She had tried. Now there was only one option left. "All ships," she ordered, "engage." The battle began with the fury of a supernova. Dark matter beams lashed out from the 5 human warships, cutting through enemy vessels with devastating efficiency. The phasing hulls deflected hundreds of incoming attacks. For the first few minutes, it seemed like the previous battle all over again, but the Shadow Alliance had learned from that defeat. They did not attack in waves. They surrounded the human ships from every direction, pouring fire from thousands of angles simultaneously. The phasing hulls held, but the dark matter cores began running hot almost immediately. On the Defender, Commander Rachel Woods watched her power levels dropping. "Admiral, we are taking too much strain. The core will not hold at this rate." "Understood," Mitchell replied. "All ships, conserve power. Focus on defensive maneuvers." The human fleet pulled into a tight formation, the 5 ships protecting each other. They stopped attacking and focused entirely on survival. But even that was not enough. The enemy had too many ships, too many weapons. It was only a matter of time. On the council station, Ambassador Price watched the battle with growing desperation. He could see what was happening. His people were losing. "I have to do something," he muttered to himself. He turned and ran toward the communication center. Counselor Vatha stood watching the display with a satisfied smile. His plan was working. The humans were trapped, their ships failing, their defenses crumbling. Soon it would all be over. Then Price's voice cut through the chamber. "Members of the Galactic Council, I have evidence of treason. Counselor Vathas has been conspiring with hostile species to destroy humanity outside of Council authority. He arranged the infiltration of our shipyard. He planned the assassination of our scientists. He organized this attack without Council approval." The chamber erupted in chaos. Representatives shouted questions and accusations. Security forces moved toward Vathas, who stood frozen in disbelief. "This is a lie," Vathas said. But his voice was weak. Price activated a display showing intercepted communications, meeting records, payment transfers. Everything Vathas had done, exposed for all to see. "The Shadow Alliance was never authorized by this council," Price declared. "Every species participating in this attack is acting illegally. Any captain who continues this assault will be charged with war crimes." The effect was immediate. On the tactical display, ships began breaking away from the attack formation. First dozens, then hundreds. Species that had joined Vathas out of fear suddenly found themselves afraid of something else. The consequences of their actions, but not everyone withdrew. Over 1,000 ships remained, crewed by captains too committed or too angry to stop. They continued their assault, determined to finish what they had started. On the vanguard, Mitchell saw the change in numbers, but knew it was not enough. Her ships were still outnumbered 200 to 1. Her cores were overheating. The horizon had already gone dark, its systems failing. "Admiral," Reed said quietly, "the Sentinel reports critical damage. They are losing hull integrity." Mitchell made a decision. "All ships except Vanguard fall back to Earth. Protect the evacuation shuttles." "Admiral," Dunn protested, "if we leave you here alone, that is an order." "Lieutenant." The 4 other ships began retreating, limping toward Earth with their damaged systems and exhausted crews. The Vanguard stayed behind, a single ship facing 1,000 enemies. Mitchell knew she was going to die. She had accepted that the moment she gave the order. But she would not die running. She would not die hiding. She would die fighting, taking as many enemies with her as she could. "Full power to weapons," she ordered. "Target the enemy flagship." The Vanguard charged forward, her dark matter cannons blazing. Enemy ships exploded around her, but more took their place. Missiles finally began finding their mark as the phasing hull flickered from power drain. The ship shook with impact after impact. "Hull breach on Deck 7, someone reported. "Casualties in engineering. Core temperature critical." Mitchell ignored it all, focused entirely on the enemy flagship ahead. If she could take out the commander, maybe the rest of the fleet would scatter. Maybe humanity would survive. "Ashley," she said softly to Lieutenant Dunn, "it has been an honor." Dunn looked at her captain with tears in her eyes. "The honor is mine, Admiral." The Vanguard's dark matter core finally reached its limit. Warning alarms screamed across the bridge. The ship was dying, and everyone knew it. "All hands, abandon ship," Mitchell ordered. "That is a direct command. Everyone get to the escape pods now." Her crew hesitated. None of them wanted to leave. "Go," Mitchell said, her voice gentle but firm. "Tell them what we did here. Tell them we fought until the end." One by one, they obeyed. The bridge emptied until only Mitchell and Dunn remained. "You too, Ashley." "No, ma'am." Dunn's hands stayed on the helm controls. "Someone needs to fly this ship, and I am not letting you die alone." Mitchell wanted to argue. She wanted to order Dunn to leave. But she understood. Some things were more important than following orders. "Then let us finish this together." The Vanguard plunged toward the enemy flagship, her failing weapons still firing, her dying core still burning. The flagship tried to evade, but it was too large. Too slow. The collision was spectacular. When the Vanguard's dark matter core finally exploded, it did something no one had predicted. The energy release was so massive, so concentrated, that it tore a hole in space itself. A rift opened, a swirling vortex of impossible forces that pulled everything nearby into its hungry mouth. The enemy flagship was the first to go, dragged into the void. Then the ships around it. Then more and more. Caught in a gravitational tide, they could not escape. By the time the rift closed, over half the remaining enemy fleet had vanished. The survivors fled in panic, their alliance shattered, their leaders lost. On Earth, Admiral Carter watched the tactical display with tears streaming down his face. The battle was over. Humanity had won, but the cost had been terrible. 3 weeks later, the Galactic Council formally invited humanity to join as a full member. Not as a minor species to be tolerated, but as equals to be respected. Councillor Vathus was arrested and imprisoned for his crimes. The Shadow Alliance collapsed entirely, its members scrambling to distance themselves from their actions. Admiral Carter stood at the memorial ceremony on Earth's orbital station, looking out at the spot where the Vanguard had made her final stand. A new ship was being built there, the finest vessel humanity had ever designed. They called her the USS Mitchell. Secretary Walsh gave the official address, her words carrying across the planet and beyond. Today, we honor the crew of the Vanguard, who gave their lives to protect us. We honor Rear Admiral Laura Mitchell and Lieutenant Ashley Dunn, who flew into the heart of an armada and did not look back. We honor everyone who stood against impossible odds and refused to surrender. She paused, looking up at the stars. The galaxy has learned something important about humanity. We are not